I just have to admit that I am neither a Vaishnavi nor a Diksha guru. So let there be no mistake there. But I am grateful to be with all of you today, and to hear from and appreciate Srimad Bhagavatam and the words of our acharyas. So let's start. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Dayam Udirayat Nashtav Vaishava-bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 4, Text 5. This is Kamsa is being responded to by the very forgiving, patient, tolerant, and desperate Devaki. So she says to Kamsa, Bahavo himsita brata shishava pavakopamaha tvaya deva nishrishtena putrikaika pradiyatam. Bhavaha, many, himsitaha, killed out of envy, brataha, my dear brother, shishavaha, small children, pavaka upamaha, all of them equal to fire in brightness and beauty. Tvaya, by you, Daiva Nisrishtena, as spoken by destiny, Putrika, daughter, Eka, one, Pradiyatam, give me as your gift. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Getting up to some of the last purports here written by Srila Prabhupada. My dear brother, by the influence of destiny, you have already killed many babies, each of them as bright and beautiful as fire. But kindly spare this daughter. Give her to me as your gift. Here you can see this word, brata, my dear brother, is like really trying to remind him of his relationship with her in an affectionate way, trying to kind of butter him up with the intention of, you know, oh, come on, I'm your sister, give me this gift, you know. We'll see if it works. I think all of you know what happens, but, and then we'll read the purport here. Here we see that Devaki first focused Kamsa's attention on his atrocious activities, his killing of her many sons. Then she wanted to compromise with him by saying that whatever he has done was not his fault, but was ordained by destiny. Then she appealed to him to give her the daughter as a gift. Devaki was the daughter of a kshatriya and knew how to play the political game. In politics, there are different methods for achieving success. First, repression, dhamma, then compromise, sama, and then asking for a gift, dana. Devaki first adopted the policy of repression by directly attacking Kamsa for having cruelly, atrociously killed her babies. Then she compromised by saying that this was not his fault, and then she begged for a gift. As we learn from the history of the Mahabharata or Greater India, the wives and daughters of the ruling class, Kshatriyas, knew the political game, but we never find that a woman was given the post of chief executive. This is in accordance with the injunctions of the Manu Samhita, but unfortunately, Manu Samhita is now being insulted, and the Aryans, the members of Vedic society, cannot do anything. Such is the nature of Kali Yuga. Nothing happens unless ordained by destiny. Tasyeva heto prayate takovido na labhyate yad brahmatam upayadha talabhyate dukhavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabhiram hasa. I'm going to read, the translation is not here in the purport, but we'll quickly click over and read the translation because I know I'm not the only non-Sanskrit scholar in the Zoom room here. So we'll read the translation to this verse. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness is derived from sense gratification is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time, we obtain miseries, even though we do not desire them. We'll go back to the purport that we're reading. Devaki knew very well that because the killing of her many children had been ordained by destiny, Kamsa was not to be blamed. There was no need to give good instruction to Kamsa. Upadesho hi murkhanam prakopaya nashantaye. Chanakya Pandit says, if a foolish person is given good instruction, he becomes more and more angry. Moreover, a cruel person is more dangerous than a snake. A snake and a cruel person are both cruel, but a cruel person is more dangerous because although a snake can be charmed by mantras or subdued by herbs, a cruel person cannot be subdued by any means. Such was the nature of Kamsa. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamayam Dudati Svavarantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And I offer my respects to all of the assembled Vaishnavas today. Vanchakalpa tubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Along with offering our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnavas that ever existed ever on this planet and every planet throughout all of the upper and lower planetary systems. Jai. So we will again read this verse. Translation. Devaki speaking to Kamsa. My dear brother, by the influence of destiny, you have already killed many babies, each of them as bright and beautiful as fire. But kindly spare this daughter. Give her to me as your gift. So we will now analyze with the instructions and try to understand a little bit more what Srila Prabhupada was explaining in this purport and give some examples. 1 second, let me just plug my computer. Of the delicate diplomacy here that Devaki is using and how diplomacy can be used in devotional service. So we see here that there are these political methods that Prabhupada mentioned in the purport that can be used to achieve one's political goals. I think sometimes we talk about, oh, devotees shouldn't be politicking, and that's true. Devotees shouldn't most of the time be politicking unless they're kshatriyas, because that's the service of the kshatriyas. And of course, these days, anyone with a Facebook or whatever account considers themselves to be a kshatriya, and their rightful claim to politicize all kinds of things all over the internet. So sometimes best to avoid hearing things outside of the Shastra if it just comes to this way, that devotee, this devotee, blah, 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 the fighting that happens. It's not always favorable for devotional service oftentimes, but we're going to talk also about the difference between diplomacy and duplicity, and how this sometimes they can look very similar, but the outcome is very different and the intention is very different of these two tactics that can have actually similar tactics involved with reaching one's goals. But diplomacy is really about a method of persuasion that is used to talk something out without having to force something on someone. But duplicity can be the same, can also involve using persuasion to convince someone of something and not force them to do. But the difference is that when one is acting in a diplomatic way, their intention is for everyone's benefit, not just their own benefit, but for everyone's benefit, for the benefit of the situation, for both, and for the greater benefit. Because although oftentimes, like in governmental situations, what benefits one person or one country isn't going to necessarily be beneficial to the other country, because everyone in Kali Yuga is very selfishly motivated and only cares about I, me, mine, and my family and my country and my political gain. But when true diplomacy is used, it's meant to be for the greater benefit. And duplicity, although it uses many similar tactics, it's really meant to cheat the other. It's meant to cheat others just to get for your own personal gain, or your own country's gain, or your own family's gain, or your own business's gain, like that. And so the intention of one using these different tactics that we'll go a little bit into is very important. And also the effects, where when diplomacy is used, it's about solving a crisis in a way that will satisfy both parties. Diplomacy is, again, it's a tactic to try to avoid a war, avoid anger and bitterness and all of these things. So it's meant to try to pacify people, even if not everyone gets their way. It's meant to sometimes just compromise, which is one of the tactics of Sama, of trying to get people to agree on something, even if they disagree on things, to try to just have a peaceful solution. So diplomacy, the effect is that it solves a crisis, whereas duplicity creates a crisis or increases a crisis. It causes people to feel cheated, to feel used and abused, taken advantage of. So we're going to look at these different tactics of diplomacy that Devaki used, because again, she was a kshatriya. She was trained in the political arts and how to communicate. And excuse me. And yeah, so the first one mentioned, I believe, is Sama, which is compromise or dialoguing, trying to negotiate, right? So Devaki's trying to negotiate. Her husband was also trying to negotiate. But they realized, and so they tried all of these different tactics, but then ultimately in this verse, it's explained that she just ended up asking for a gift because she came to the understanding, the conclusion, because every soul has, we have our demoniac and our divine tendencies. So they were, at the beginning, they were really trying to find that spark of good qualities and the divine, the compassion, the logic. They tried so many different tactics to try to convince Kamsa not to kill their children, and one after another, he did it anyways. They tried to use so many tactics, and that similar things were used in terms of just trying to save Devaki's life. If you remember a few chapters ago. And now again, they're trying to use these compromise and dialogue. But at this point, they're kind of like, Devaki's coming to understand that it's not really getting through to him, because of what Srila Prabhupada gave this explanation in the purport, that, if you feed a snake milk, it only increases their poison. And some people are just so far gone that you can't try to reason with them. So she's simply trying to use this next tactic, political tactic, of just asking for a gift. Please just give me this child as a gift. So this is the political tactic of dana. And then they also use the tactic of dhamma, or sometimes referred to as danda, which is where you're trying to kind of just like repress the other person or force the other person by, she was directly pointing out his wrongdoings. She was directly pointing out, look, my dear brother, you already killed all of these children. Like, haven't you had enough? Like, hasn't, and all of the previous children were sons. You know that it's a son that's supposed to come and by destiny be your future death. And here is a daughter. So why are you going to kill my daughter? Like, destiny doesn't say that it's a daughter, that it's my daughter that's going to kill you. So she already tried using all of these, so many logical tactics. So now she's asking for a gift. She also pointed out, you know, the pain and the harm and the wrongdoing that he's done, to try to kind of get in there and be like, you've already done so much, just give this to me as a gift, right? And there's a fourth one that Srila Prabhupada doesn't mention because it's not used here in this particular verse. But there's a fourth tactic that's used in Vedic, you know, diplomacy. You also see it used outside of people trying to be Vedic. Is a tactic called Peda, which means logic or mental trickery. And an example of this is when Krishna told Yudhisthira Maharaj, who's Dharmaraj, to actually lie to Dronacharya, because he was trying to get Dronacharya to understand, or actually, no, sorry. Yeah, he lied. Krishna tried to get Yudhisthira to lie to Dronacharya, because he knew that was the only way that he would be able to defeat and cause some weakness in Dronacharya. And so Krishna told Yudhisthira to say that Ashvatthama was dead, because Ashvatthama was Dronacharya's son and would cause him great grief. But Ashvatthama, the person, wasn't dead. However, Ashvatthama was also the name of an elephant that had died bravely in the battlefield. And so under his breath, Yudhisthira said out loud, Ashvatthama. And then under his breath, the elephant is dead. So that Dronacharya would think that Ashvatthama, his son, had been killed in battle. And so this is an example of even Krishna encouraging his devotee to use these diplomatic things, these diplomatic tactics, to achieve dharmic ends. And he had to really convince Yudhisthira about it, because Yudhisthira is like so attached to his dharma that he was like, I can't lie, it's a lie. It wasn't a complete lie, but it was kind of lying. And he was like, I can't lie, I can't do that. Like, he was so attached to that. But of course, above the dharma of a kshatriya is the eternal dharma, the nitya dharma of the devotee. And that is sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja, to surrender to Krishna. And Krishna was directly asking him to do this, so he did it. And but it was like an example of this diplomatic tactic of Bheda, using logic and trickery to try to meet one's ends. But again, it wasn't a duplicitous act because he was doing it to please Krishna and to serve the higher purpose of achieving the goal that Krishna wanted to see happen in the battlefield. So these are just some different understandings of how these political tactics can be used. So let's talk a little bit about how diplomacy can properly be used in devotional service. One time I was serving my spiritual master breakfast, and there was a discussion going on at the breakfast table. I was just quietly serving everyone. I didn't want to get involved, you know. And there was some, you know, discussion going on. I don't want to get into it exactly, but somebody at the table asked, Tulsi, Rani, what do you think? And I was like, I forget exactly what I said, but I said something that was like trying to understand both sides of the argument, because that's just my nature. Is I actually like to see and really try to understand all different angles of an argument before coming to a conclusion, because oftentimes there is some reasoning behind the different arguments, and it's not always as black and white as sometimes we like to see. So I gave some answer that wasn't necessarily taking sides, and my spiritual master said, "Ah, you are very diplomatic." And I didn't know for the longest time, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, is he like making an observation? Is that like a bad thing that I'm diplomatic, you know? Or is it a good thing? And in studying for this class, I came to understand that, well, it depends if your diplomacy is being used in devotional service, or your diplomacy is going more into the realm of duplicity. If you're using these tactics of trying to keep the peace and understand things, pacify people, if it's just for your own gain, for your own selfish gain, then it's not proper. But if it's trying to keep the peace among the Vaishnavas, if it's trying to make everyone satisfied and ultimately to come to the end of everyone being enlivened and encouraged in Krishna consciousness and having loving relationships amongst the Vaishnavas, then it is okay to use diplomacy. So I hope my spiritual master will be, I pray and I ask all of you to pray for me that I only use diplomatic tactics in devotional service in a way that will be pleasing to Guru and Krishna. And I pray all the same for all of you as well. So we can see how this diplomacy of, you know, trying to properly handle a situation without arising hostility within others, without encouraging people to become more angry, to try to like pacify everyone. And Srila Prabhupada actually stated, when I was researching this, I found in a purport when he was talking about Prahlad Maharaj in a purport to the pastime of Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu, he actually said that diplomacy used in devotional service is good. So there we go. It is become official. And it is giving the example of how Sanatan Goswami, when he was trying to escape prison to go and serve Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also used diplomacy. And he's like trying to, talk to the guards of how it would be beneficial for them to let him out of prison. And ultimately he, gave them money. Even you could say bribed them. That's not Vaishnav to bribe someone. But if something is done purely in devotional service, then one can even do a so-called adharmic activity for the highest dharma. Is another example of that. But we at the same time, I want to, while giving examples of how people can do seemingly adharmic things for a higher dharma of pleasing Krishna and devotional service, in this case, serving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we also have to be aware of ourselves as practicing and aspiring Vaishnavas, and how within our hearts there may still be some demoniac tendencies there that we should be aware of, and make sure that our intentions and our motives of ever using something like, these different tactics, we should always look within and analyze our hearts and try to, as far as possible, sincerely make sure that our intentions are for devotional service and not with ulterior motives. And if we do see ulterior motives, then we should really pray to Krishna and ask our senior devotees for guidance, whether or not we should actually endeavor for something. So we can see also this some examples of duality and the misuse of these diplomatic tactics is obviously there in Kamsa, right? We see both earlier when he was trying to logically explain using the Shastra, using Gyan, using real Vedic knowledge to justify why he was doing so many things. And in the future, in the next few verses, you'll see how he responds to Devaki, using some of these same tactics, using logic, using trying to compromise, create negotiation, all of these things, and specifically using the Shastra to back up his reasoning, saying, oh, but everything is, being done by destiny, by our, karma, all of these things. So, and Devaki even admits the same, but, and she uses the same thing as a tactic to try to save and protect her child, although it wasn't, Maya Devi actually wasn't her child. But she's trying to protect although, Devaki doesn't really need to protect Maya, but still she is doing so as an act of service and real motherly affection, that the power that a woman has of having this intense compassion and affection for the child. And so Prabhupada uses this example of this analogy of the snake in the purport here. He says how milk touched by the lips of a serpent becomes more poisonous, and even the snake can be charmed by mantras and herbs. But a cruel person, he's saying, is even worse than a snake, because there ain't no charming someone whose heart is just like overcome with cruel ambitions and desires. And so it's important to understand, what does it mean that a serpent becomes more poisonous when they drink milk. It's apparent. I'm not an expert in snake biology or anything, but apparently it's a thing that if snakes drink poison, it has some internal chemical reaction for them that increases the potency of their venom. And so we have to understand that knowledge is power. It is a very important thing. In today's world, we oftentimes, without greater knowledge, use this phrase to try to just encourage anyone and everyone to get educated. And education is important. I'm not saying it's not, but if people are getting educated in certain things, but they're not being educated morally, if they're being educated academically, and if they're being educated in how to, use all these different political maneuvers, if they're being educated in how to communicate nicely, if they're being educated with so much Vedic knowledge even, but if they're misusing their education, if they haven't been educated in how to be a moral human being, what to speak of being educated about these higher principles of understanding Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is his property, therefore everything should be utilized in his service, and to understand these more important principles. But what to speak of even just basic human moral principles if we aren't educated in those things, and yet people get such a big education. It is true, knowledge is power, and knowledge can be used to do horribly destructive things, right? Knowledge can be used to create great cities like New York City, and that city can be used 99.999% of the time for, sense gratification and exploitation. And sometimes it can be used, for some higher purposes, like distributing prasadam out in Tompkins Square Park with Adi Purusha. It can be used. Krishna's energies in this city can be used to have, incredible, wonderful kirtans, and have this building, and in the center of Manhattan, the Bhakti Center, and right in the middle of all of the crazy material madness going on, so we can use it for those purposes. It can also be misused. So it takes a lot of knowledge to build these big, big buildings. It takes a lot of knowledge to figure out how to connect all of the different electrical wires and bring power and electricity into every single, nook and corner of this city. But how is that knowledge being used? What is it being used for? To what are the ends? Is it actually, ultimately benefiting anyone on the level of the heart and the soul? Oftentimes not. It might give us more easy forms of sense gratification. But what are we using it for? So all of our knowledge is very powerful. The truth is that knowledge is power, but the question is, what are you going to use that power to do? And what are you going to use your knowledge to accomplish? And so there's many examples of how knowledge can be misused, and this power can be misused in such a way that it's like a serpent that drinks milk and only increases their venom. And we see so many examples. I mean, there's like unlimited examples in Kali Yuga of gurus misusing Vedic knowledge even. Ravana is a great example. He misused so much Vedic knowledge just for sense gratification. And oh, we're running out of time here. Wow, Hare Krishna, I didn't even realize it. So I'll just quickly end here with a few examples of how we shouldn't waste time giving instruction to cruel people because of this, the problem that can happen with, you know, just fueling their fire of envy and anger and hate. So it says, Prabhupada in the purport says, if a cruel person is given good instruction, they only become more and more angry. So some examples are of Hiranyakashipu, right? Prahlad Maharaj would try to give him some good examples. It only fueled his fire. He only was burning with more and more anger, trying to kill his son. Ravana is another example. He was being instructed by Marichi, don't take Sita away. And then he threatened to kill Marichi. He became so angry. And then Duryodhana, insulting Vidura after Vidura was again and again humbly trying to tell him, don't fight this war, don't gamble, you're just gonna cause so much chaos and death and tragedy. Why? Duryodhana wouldn't listen to him, only became more and more angry, you know. But I want to end with this point, very significant point, that there are exceptions to this rule in Gora Lila, and how the Chandkazi, who at first, when given instruction not to, you know, disturb the Sankirtan party, at first it did fuel his fire. It did make him angry. He threatened, and his men hurt the devotees. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood is that of so much mercy, that he alone, him and Nityananda Prabhu, could draw out even the tiniest spark of devotion within the heart of a very cruel person. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually did convince the Chandkazi and pacify the Chandkazi by giving him good instruction. And the same happened with Jagai and Madhai and Nityananda. That Jagai and Madhai were trying to kill him. And at first, when he was giving them the good instruction, take the holy names of Krishna, it only increased their anger. But because the potency of Lord Nityananda's compassion is so great, they actually, it actually had the effect of pacifying them. So there is some exceptions to this rule, but only when one is specifically empowered by Nityananda and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood of mercy can one preach to such atheists and offenders. Otherwise, it's recommended that Sangha Tyaga, that we actually avoid these people, because we avoid trying to preach to people that are so cruel that they're not innocent enough to accept the message of please just chant Krishna's name, become a devotee of Krishna. So it is 8 o'clock. I'm really sorry that there isn't more time for questions. I did sincerely mean to leave more time for questions and answers, but the time got away from us. So if there are any questions or comments, do we take them?
Yeah. Yes, we can take one.
We can take
From
okay.
Bhima Prabhu. I see his
Bhima
hand raised.
Prabhu. Questions, corrections are also accepted, because I am a faulted soul.
Haribol. Wonderful class. Haribo, wonderful class. On the last 2 points, you mentioned that the Kazi was convinced to surrender and allow the Sankirtan movement to persist. But we also have to remember that it took Nrsingadev sitting on his chest, threatening to rip his heart out. Lord Chaitanya came in the form of Lord Nrsingadev to convince him. And also Jagai Madai, it took Lord Chaitanya to bring out his chakra and for Jagai and Madai to see that chakra before they bowed down and became devotees. Sometimes these atheists, in fact, all times, atheists are people who are inimical towards Krishna, have to meet Krishna in the form of death personified before they realize that, like an atheist in a foxhole, that they should surrender. So do you have any statement on that?
Oh, it's just an excellent point. But there's also examples of people, seeing Krishna and seeing Krishna's power before them. They still didn't give up, they still didn't surrender to Krishna. Like Kamsa is one of them, Yeah. In the future of the 10th canto, we'll be reading about how, Krishna showed Kamsa his great powers, and yet Kamsa, he was relentless. So
Duryodhana as well.
Yeah. So many examples of people that Krishna showed them, and it still didn't do anything. There's demons that specifically challenged Krishna because they just wanted a good fight, because they knew he'd put out a good fight. They knew he was, and Kamsa especially knew that Krishna was death personified. Before Krishna even appeared, he was given the heads up, hey, Krishna's death personified for you. And he never surrendered. He never changed his heart. So, but you do bring up some very beautiful points of how, both in the case of Jagai and Madhai and the Chandkasi, that when they were seeing, some power of Krishna. But I think more than that, it's because of the power of the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. Yeah. So, but thank you. Very excellent points and additions. Thank you. Anything else?
One more, dear devotees, one more from online audience. The temple room is out.
Okay, yeah.
Reading the deities.
Jai. Oh, Radha Muralidhar Gaur Chandra. Jai.
All right. I think that's it. Tulsi Rani, beautiful class, very shastric, a lot of examples, bona fide, good stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Krishna Daya Das, don't show your chakra. Show them Srila Prabhupada's book. That's the way to go. All right. Thanks everyone for joining, for smiling, for keeping your cameras on and off. We don't care as long as you give Srila Prabhupada and his presenters your ear. That's good enough. Bhima Prabhu, thank you so much. Beautiful comments. Keep your chakra in the pocket for now. All right. Okay, Hare Krishna. Love you all. Haribol.